contemporary Hollywood styling. Now, Don Blair, Monty Zucker, and Clay Blackmore share with you their 100 years of combined photographic experience. For 5 days, these three masters came together at Winona School, the official school of the Professional Photographers of America. Those fortunate enough to have been there had their lives and their professional careers enriched beyond all expectation. Now, you are about to experience the same. The images you see created in this program are as distinctive as these photographers themselves, reflecting the unique style and ability of each. Now watch as they help you build castles in the air, and at the same time, help you create the foundations you'll need to support them. Don, Clay, and Monty love what they do. You will too.
Hey, I'm supposed to be looking casual here in the editing suites. Would you believe it took us an hour and a half to set this up? But everything we've done this week is worthwhile, because it was a dream come true. Sharing the spotlight with Don Blair, Clay Blackmore, and myself, the three of us put together 100 years of professional photography. We experienced this at Winona School, and here we are bringing it to you live as it happened. Now you're going to notice there are a few jumpy spots. This was not shot for the camera. The camera was just on the side picking up what was taking place. And speaking of taking place, Clay, how did you feel coming up against Don with 50 years experience, me with 40, and you only 10? That was a pretty difficult situation to put you in.
I have to say it was probably the toughest challenge of my life, but I fell into it as an assistant's point of view, and when I got my chance, I would jump behind the camera and make a few images. That's always the way my success has been with you. As soon as you pull out and you said, I've had it, I'll jump in and take a few exposures, and that's the way I kind of approached the whole week. But I'll tell you, by midweek, I was very concerned of my input on the photographic print set. But as you'll see in the coming week, I got my hands wet and I had a good time doing it.
Did you think that you'd be able to come up with good enough images to compete with Don and me? Tell us the truth now.
Well, I didn't look at it competitively. I enjoy being the assistant. I really do, and I'm a team player. So I felt like I was going to be a backup to the two of you all week long. And when I did have that chance just to sneak in and take a picture here and there, I had fun doing it, just like the pictures out at the park.
Folks, he did more than sneak in. The guy took over. The kid is great. Don was fabulous. Unfortunately, he can't be with us here today while we're editing the tape. But you're going to see and experience one of the most exciting, fun times that we have had professionally together. It's our pleasure to bring to you 100 years of professional photographic experience.
That's 90 from Don Blair and 10 from the two of us.
I'll go with that.
Hello, I'm Frank Crickhill, Director of Education of Winona International School of Professional Photography. This is the official school of the Professional Photographers of America. This school operates 10 months out of the year. We invite photographers from all over the world to attend. We offer over 200 classes. We have instructors that specialize in their field that are working professional photographers come to this school and teach other working professional photographers. Our classes are either 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or a full week long. It's an extensive education type of school. Working professional photographers being taught by working professional photographers.
Angie, breaking the mold, the best way to break a mold is to work with Clay. Because Clay will never let me finish a sitting. Every time I'm finished, he says, well, why don't we try this or why don't we try that? And invariably, those turn out to be the better pictures. I didn't say the best. Well, possibly. But you need really somebody over you, or you need to set something that's going to make you keep going, because we fall into a trap of being very comfortable in our rut. And we're all in a rut at one level or in a comfort zone. So usually when I'm tired, Clay will break the comfort zone and make me try something else. Either that or he takes over and creates a better image than I do. So you need to challenge yourself. You need to set goals, but challenging goals that are going to say, I will not do or complete a portrait sitting unless I've tried at least something new. One of the most recent portraits that we did, we haven't opened up the things with canvas yet, have we?
They rolled out in the back there.
Can you bring that canvas? A lot of times, when we finish a portrait sitting and try something else, and I had not planned to use in our new studio the living room window. It was there strictly for looks. But Clay designed a whole series of portraits around our living room window.
The light from the window is perfect. All we need is a silver reflector in the lower corner to open up the shadows. As a matter of fact, that's why we used a round frame to cover the reflector. Let's go back to the class now and watch us in action.
Would you copy something that would you copy something that another photographer has already done?
Daily. You're going to steal from the bed.
You notice he points to Don, not to me.
Hey, you're my man, all right?
We kept getting great questions from the audience, and here somebody is asking me about how do you know what lens to use under what situations? So let's go back now.
And we'll just keep referring to the situations by pulling up some of our photographs. I know that there are times when I want to show a lot of background. I know there are times that I don't want to show a lot of background and concentrate. Recently in Australia, I photographed a young lady and a man and lady together by the waterfront, and there was all kinds of distractions in the background. I used a long focal length lens, which limited the view to just what was behind them. So you get the feeling of the blueness of the water without all the distractions of the trees and the skyline and everything else. So the idea is, if you want to show a little bit of background behind the people, use a long focal length lens. On the other hand, when you want to show a lot of background behind the people, use a wide-angle lens. I started using a wide-angle lens because I looked at Don's prints, and I'd say that so many of your prints are done by a 40 millimeter. So you want to talk about some of your water pictures there?
This is kind of the one here of Jane Zeiser. We did this in, that's with a 40 millimeter lens. We made the was an assignment outside, etc., from like 12 till 2 o'clock, mid-afternoon. We got out to this beautiful setup, and it was just absolutely was not the right time to make the photograph. So I told our class, I said, I'm going to come back here 5 o'clock in the morning. It isn't mandatory that you're here, and so on and so forth. But I said, I'm coming back to make an image because it's a beautiful setup. It's a beautiful thing. And by using a 40 millimeter lens, by the way, we got back out there at 5 o'clock the next morning. The whole class was there, and so on and so forth. But what happened with this, using a 40 millimeter lens and employing a bare bulb? And this is what happens by putting that, Susan, that light in the frontal plane to give illumination here, give illumination to the background, etc., into here. To me, that's when the decision-making has to come. We have to hold the detail, etc., okay? We have to hold the detail into the overall image, then match that image or match that reading. And by the way, we're going to be doing that when we go outside this week. We're going to be doing exactly this same thing. Matching that very image with the bare bulb. I like to match it exactly. That's giving a rendition. It's picking up the brilliance, in my opinion, picking up the brilliance of the subject as well as the background. Okay, so it's a matching thing. And I think that's important. And remember, if you don't remember anything else this week, shake your heads and wake up for one more second. The angle of incident is equal to the angle of reflection.
That's where Clay gets it from. I don't understand it, but I've heard it. Okay, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll put up there a bare bulb.
That's exactly what that's here, and it's leaving at the same angle. Yeah, we'll be doing it. Okay?
Okay, so we'll talk about getting the water in the background. As a matter of fact, I found a location yesterday where in the middle of Chicago, there's Lincoln Park. we're going to go there one day this week if we can get enough cars. We'll have lunch there because there's a restaurant, and we'll do some photographs of people in front of the water, using the lagoon as a background, and off in the distance is the whole line of Chicago, skyline of Chicago. So we'll be doing actually what you asked for.
Gorgeous.
Matter of fact, anything you ask for, we're going to try to.
You bet, you bet.
I just sold a deposit back myself, but I'm thinking about changing that because it's kind of an expensive price and all that.
Well, refunding deposits, I've changed my approach to that also in the past probably year. I used to refund all deposits because I figured if I wasn't going to do the work, I wasn't going to keep their money. I've since changed because I've had a few refunds that really annoyed me. So I've changed my policy to, from the time you give me the deposit, it's refundable for 30 days. And we're usually booking something sufficiently far enough in advance so that if we give it back within 30 days, then we can fill that date again. I also find that if people know that the deposit is refundable for 30 days, they're more apt to make a decision at that time rather than to go out and think that once I give them the money, it's gone. So our deposits are for 30 days refundable. After that, not. Lighting for groups in a church sanctuary. Let me just briefly, since you asked for that, I do have this whole group picture. Clay, can you help me find this group picture? It's probably in the print case here somewhere. Let's look at this photograph. Some of these things can best be covered when they just happen. The majority of people who say they want their pictures done on the church altar, it could or could not be effective. Quite often the church altar is so ornate that it detracts. In other instances, like when this picture was made, the church altar was dark. There was very little lighting, but the lighting appeared on the arches. And I noticed during the ceremony that the most effective pictures were those made from the back of the church, showing the whole interior. Thank you. That's the same thing here. So what we did at the conclusion of the ceremony when we reassembled the wedding party, we brought the wedding party all the way to the back of the church. Fortunately, there was enough room here. And what's your typical exposure for, time exposure for a ceremony? Half second at 5/6. Do you use an exposure meter? Yeah, but typically I'd go with a half second at 5/6. And in that case, then you know that you're going to have the whole church with detail. So we're going to expose a half second at 5/6 to pick up all the background. You're going to find that this is the same exact principle that we use in the studio. The same exact principle we use when we're on location. If you want the background to reproduce the tone that it is, then you have the same amount of light on the background as you do on the subject.
I hope all of you are recording this. This is most important. Intellectual statement, young man. Great,
yes.
Great.
I would take an incident reading, or else you could take a spot meter reading.
You want the church altar and put it towards the back, or you stand in the back and face the meter towards the altar?
Face the meter towards the back. An incident light meter, the light falling on the little round ball. And I think what I actually did, or what Clay did, is we just sort of walked the church and watched the exposure change. And we'll take an average reading of the church. So that's our exposure for the ceremony. We're using type L film for the ceremony. That's for long exposures, and that records the color a lot more accurately than type S film. So we'll take that same exposure that we use for the ceremony, but this time I'm switching to type S film because I'm not really concerned so much with the color of the background. So now what we're going to do, if we're exposing at a half second at 5/6, and we want it to reproduce the color that it is, then we have to have the same amount of light on the people that we have on the background. So we used one light with this reflector on it. This was actually made by Photogenic for a background light. And the reason it was made is because it spreads 180 degrees. So we will take one light and keep it near camera position. The wider the group, the closer the light comes towards the center of the camera. We're not going to bring the light over at a 45 because we're going to have a different amount of light on this side as we have on this side. We're not going to have the same light pattern on the faces if we light from this side, because certain people are going to have much more shadow on their faces than others.
This instance, the light was about 7 feet away from camera. But on this instance, the light was right behind the camera. Because we can get away with a little modeling here for 2 people or 1 person. But for groups, the light's right above us.
Does that make sense why the light is brought closer to the camera for the large group?
Give it out.
Specific coverage, even coverage, okay.
So how much exposure do we want on the people? 5, 6. So as soon as we zero that in for 5, 6, then we know that if we expose for a half second, at 5, 6, we're going to get exactly what we have here. We want it to light the veil just a touch. So
We just put this is our candid strobe. We'll be using it all week. Just pop the reflector off, put it behind the bride, 5, 6. I just put it on red, 5, 6.
So that backlit her veil just a little bit. Even though we're shooting at a half second, and sometimes even as much as a second, we don't get any movement in the people. Or if it does, it's not enough to worry us. The actual photograph, the people are frozen with the strobe, the flash from the strobe, and the rest of the exposure allows the background to come into it.
We're finished with a portrait sitting, a typical portrait sitting on a painted background, and we had some film left in the camera. That morning I was looking at a book by a photographer named Horst, H-O-R-S-T, and he was really top. He was very good with black and white photography, and he did a picture like that in his book, but the girl had bare arms, no shirt. She was probably nude, I don't remember, but you couldn't see anything. Well, her mother was there, and I said, well, for the Polaroid, go ahead and wear your blouse. We're going to do it this way. We did a Polaroid, and Monty said, you know, I think the blouse blends in beautifully. She's not in a wedding gown. We took a piece of foam and rolled it and laid it in the studio and put the wedding gown on top of the foam and laid her on the foam, and she's just leaning back on it. And so we did a Polaroid, and then we just kept shooting. I was going to do black and white, but it just happened so fast we did it all in color. And this picture's probably given me more mileage than anything ever. It's been in 3 magazines, 1 cover in England, and it just went to Epcot.
The whole idea about these pictures, and I'm sure that Don and Clay and I all agree, that the first thing that we have to do is learn how to analyze. Before we analyze people's feelings to get the emotions, we have to learn how to analyze faces. So the first thing that we want to do is facial analysis, and we have to learn how to look at a face and know what angle of the face we're going to photograph and know which side of the face the light is going to be placed on. So let's begin with that.
Everybody's always been looking for a secret formula. Well, it's no secret, and here it is. This is the simple way in which we pose the young feminine form. This is a reproduction of an antique statue that holds actually true even today. It's a classic pose, a classical way to relate the woman's head to the shoulders. We call it the feminine pose, and actually all it is the face is turned and tipped to the high shoulder. So how do we create the high shoulder? By leaning the body forward at the waist. The back shoulder lowers and the front shoulder is higher. We're always turning and tipping the head to that higher shoulder, and it also shows that the face is turned towards the light. Now let's back up on this again and show you where the light is. Show you how we're working with just one single light to light the feminine face. The light is above and to one side at about a 45-degree angle. And that light is a permanent fixture now, as is the relationship of the head to the shoulders. So when the head is turned and tipped to that shoulder, the relationship of the face to the light remains permanent. So when we look at a face, we analyze the face and photograph the face at 3 specific angles with this light pattern. So let's look first of all at the light pattern. There's a small shadow below and going to the side from the nose. does not connect to the lip. Both eyes are definitely lit by the one single main light. I'm not looking for a triangular patch of light on the left side of her face. I'm looking for just this little small shadow of the nose. We call it a modified butterfly lighting. And when we photograph faces from 3 angles: full face, 2/3, and profile. This, of course, is the full face. Now let's suppose that we turn this statue just a little bit to achieve a 2/3 view of the face. The lighting pattern remains identical. So as the head turned to get to the 2/3 view of the face, and let's see what the 2/3 view of the face is. We'll come in real close and show you that the eye, her right eye on the far side of the face, is almost to the edge of the outline of the face. The nose does not cross over the eye. The nose does not come close to the edge of the cheek, nor does the nose cross out of the cheek, because then you're getting a distorted outline of the face. Instead, we want to turn the face back until we see just a little bit of flesh beyond the eye. Now notice that the light pattern remains the same, and the way that light pattern remained the same is as the shoulders and the head turned, the light moved with it. So now, instead of the light being where it was in relationship to the camera, it's moved further away from the camera as the face turns away from the camera, so that, again, we're achieving the exact same lighting pattern. Now, for the full face, the shoulders were at a 45-degree angle to the camera. And now when the face is at 2/3, you can see that the shoulders are actually facing straight into the camera. It's the same pose, the same lighting pattern. It's just as if the camera moved around and looked at a different view. So you know, if you want to set up a 2/3 view of the face in the feminine pose, you start out with the body facing the camera. Let's go back and look at full face. When we're photographing the full face, the shoulders are at a 45-degree angle. Her head is turned and tipped just slightly to her higher right shoulder. And then as we change it to the 2/3, we turn her body straight into the camera, and the face is still turned and tipped to that higher right shoulder. Let's go now to the 3rd angle, and you'll see the profile of the face. The profile of the face is not with a little bit of eye showing. Some people think we should have an eyelash showing, but it really would depend on how long the eyelashes are. This, to me, is a profile. It's 1/2 of the face right down the middle. We're not seeing a little bit of eye or a little bit of the eyebrow showing on the other side of the face. We're turning the face away so that you have a smooth forehead going straight into the profile, 1/2 of the face right down the middle. Same lighting pattern as before. And once again, the shoulders are turned at a 45-degree angle to the camera. So now let's back off and see where the light is. As the shoulders turned, as the face turned, the light also had to move. So now that light is actually further away from the camera than the subject is, and the light is coming back towards the camera. Okay, let's look now at some refinements of what we've just been discussing. First of all, one of the most important things for you to remember is that in all of these instances, we had her body turned away from the light and her face turned back towards the light. That's very important in the feminine form because it allows us to show more detail in the clothing and just gives you a more three-dimensional effect. The body turned away from the light and the head turned towards the light. Let's come in closer and look at this lighting pattern and see when it's there and when it's not there. Because
if the light is too far over, like this is, you see that nose shadow starting to encroach upon the eye and move too far horizontally. This is not what we're looking for, a triangular patch of light, because you're seeing how it destroys the pattern and the shape of the face. Watch what happens as that light comes closer and closer to the front, till you hardly even notice that the face is being lit. If the light comes too high, we could lose the eye. If the shadow from the nose comes too low, it destroys the lip line. If the light is missing the subject entirely, then it just grays out. So what we're going to actually do is turn the light or the figure to achieve that lighting pattern. And once it's there, it's in place completely for the full face, the 2/3, and the profile. And you notice when we come in close, as we're doing here, we're sometimes coming in so close that we crop off top of the head. And that's so that we can retain the eyes in the strongest part of the picture, which is about 1/3 of the way down from the top. But we have to have these pictures on display, and we have to discuss this with the customer while we're taking the picture. Otherwise, they may think that we made a mistake. And we talked about 3 angles of the face: full face, 2/3, and profile. Realize that we could turn the face in the other direction too. So we have 2/3 from the other side and profile. But you can see what's happening now. The lighting on this side is flat. As we turn the face away from the camera, the light has to move over onto the other side so that the shadowed side of the face is always closest to the camera. Okay, to prevent the shadows from going as dark as they appear here, to keep everything in relationship to what the film and the paper can print, we're going to have to open up those shadows. So we're going to simply put a reflector in beside the face, aim the light in front of the face, it hits the reflector, and it pushes that light around and opens up the shadows. And let's just look, when we turn this to profile, you can see a very, very important element, and that is that the reflector is always in front of the face. Now that we've got this down, we understand the simple pose, we understand the lighting, the placement of the lights, and the reflector. Let's put it into practice, because this is the pattern that we're going to be using in almost all of our studio portraiture.
Now let's look at the pose that we use for men and women. It's a basic pose called the masculine pose. In the upper left, you see the man's head and body going in the same direction, and his head tipped slightly to the lower shoulder so that it's perpendicular to the slope of his shoulders. In the upper right-hand corner, you have the back profile of the woman in the feminine pose, and the 2/3 view of the man in the masculine pose. Now let's look at the group of 4. All 3 of the upper people are in a masculine pose. The woman in the lower left is in a feminine pose, and that allows all the heads to turn and tip to the light at the same angle. And finally, we have the pose where both the man and woman are looking at each other in profile. They are both in the feminine pose. Let's go back to class now.
I firmly feel that we have been in a situation for a lengthy time as a profession where we have been in a situation, and the Yellow Godfather, and I quote, he has invited us to operate on a 3-to-1 ratio of light. I'm not saying that's wrong, but personally I think it ought to be a little stronger than a 3-to-1 ratio of light. My preference is a 4-to-1 ratio of light. I think 3-to-1 is a situation if you're doing the high school senior or if you're doing the underclassmen, etc. The light is much, much softer. The ratio is much, much more diminished. I personally think if we're into the carriage trade type setup, then we want to go ahead and do our thing up to like a 4-to-1 ratio of light. If you want to work, and we agree that you want to work on a 4-to-1 ratio of light, okay? What is the stop difference, or what is the difference between how many stops, I guess is what I'm trying to say, between fill and main light to obtain a 4-to-1 ratio of light? That's great. Everybody knows the answer. Nobody responded. That's good. Let me repeat it just for my own little old bald image so that it will sink in. It's a stop and a half difference. A stop and a half difference is giving us a 4-to-1 ratio of light. So if we're set, just to, for instance, say we're set at the fill at an F8, then we want to set the main light, modeling light, or key light at 11.5. My own personal opinion, I firmly believe that we ought to be able to feather the light. We ought to be able to use the light so that it is feathered, so that it's a controllable light. Or we are using the edge of the light. To me, that's the name of the game. In our studio, as we're going to use here, we use a 16-inch parabolic light, a photogenic 16-inch parabolic light with barn doors, with the diffusion. And the light is literally painted. I'm talking now about the main modeling or key light. That light is barn doored down to the tune of like 4 or 5 inches. The light then is literally painted onto that subject so that it's a gradual wraparound or feathering of light. All right, now let's jump back. If that light, that main modeling or key light, is set at 11.5, at the same distance, in fact, many of you that I've had the pleasure of working with, you know what I'm going to say. We use 2 lights, an accent light. So in a sense, there's 2 main lights. I like to refer to it as an accent or a garlic light. It's on the same side of the subject as the main light. The 2 lights then will intersect, like being feathered, that will intersect in the front plane of the face like 4 to 5 inches in front thereof. So we are using the edge of the light and literally painting with that light. That accent light, let me invite you to shake your heads, wake up for 1 second. The accent light at approximately the same distance, okay, as the main light, is set at 1 stop less than the main light, or in this particular case that we're illustrating, 8.5. So what am I saying? The light is feathered. We're using the edge of the light. It's barn doored down, just barely, so we're literally painting with that light. We're wrapping the light around that subject. Okay? By controlling, and by the way, we're also using a soft focus filter 99% of the time, because I like to refer to it as an on-camera type retouching, or it's soft enough that it just barely blends the rendition of light onto that given subject. The hair light, I use that light that name very sparingly. You can see why. Let's use it. Let's address it as a separation light. The light that is literally separating the body, shoulder, etc., quote, quote, hair, from the body itself relative to background. Whenever in doubt, and you're using or photographing a carriage trade type setup, all right, where it's a carriage trade type without the flamboyancy of the senior, where you're blasting the light onto that hair and so on, just an average, quote, quote, carriage trade type thing. That light, in my opinion, you'll never go wrong if it's set at the same setting as your fill light or your splash light. It's giving just a separation of light, the same thing as the background light. That background light and the hair light can be set at exactly that same setting, and you'll have a good wraparound of light. As far as the overall reading, let me back up. F8 at the fill. 11.5, main light, or modeling light. 9.5, accent light, or garlic light. 8 on the separation, 8 on the background light. That's going to give you a good overall rendition. With that setup, and you come back and put your meter right at subject now, right at subject's face, okay? And pointing that meter right back into Mr. Lens, you're going to get a reading of like 11.3. What I do is I cheat just a tiny bit and set the aperture at f11. That way it's giving you, we're working just a tiny bit. I'm not saying that we have to overexpose or, you know what I mean, really go that much, but I would rather have the negative full than lesser in intensity, so you don't have the fall off of light all the way through. Let's talk briefly about outside, whether we're at the a seascape in the park or whatever type photograph that we want to work on. Let's say that we're late evening, a sunset type photograph, okay? And we want to show the beautiful, beautiful background area or the back sky area. I will read that sky with my spot meter and put that meter onto that sky. Then I like to put the old ball head into the zone system. Okay, and think out loud going like from 0 on up to zone 10. I like to read that background and put it into a zone 7 or 7.5. That means that I'm working on the highlight side of the photograph. Agreed? So that it's not burning up the highlight area, but it's still recording the shadow area. Let's take a for instance. Let's say that it reads, I don't care. Let's say like a 1/25th even at 5/6. And I prefer 5/6 because I know that's what the bare bulb will do. You know what I mean, when at a given distance. And by using it that way, I will match the bare bulb to the f-stop onto the background. Now we've got another shoot today, and today it's that dirty, 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 dismal day. We've got to do it. You know what I mean? If the appointment's there, we've got to do it. We've got to go to the bank. So we're going to do it. Now, but it's that dirty, dismal, gray, bad day. All right, you get the beautiful bride or the beautiful couple, your same setup, out on the rocks, out on the what have you. It doesn't matter where. Now, you want to record that, but you look at that setting and you say to yourself, self, I don't want to record that dirty, gray background. That is absolutely atrocious. That is absolutely terrible. Here's my suggestion, what to do. Pose the subject so that you have direction of light, no matter what, as minimal as it might seem. And it won't have a harsh, light on a day like this, but it will have highlight and shadow. All right? Put the light, or read it onto the shadow side of that subject. Read the reading on the shadow side of that subject. That is now your exposure. What happens automatically now to the background? What is high key? Oh, it's nothing more than putting more light on the background. That's all. That's all it is. So by putting more light on the background, in the studio, that's all you do. Let's put more light on the background outside. How do we do it? We have two options. Ask the great one upstairs to put more light down and then clear it up. That usually doesn't work too well. Unless your name is Monty. Then it'll work. All right, now, then it'll do it. Now, or read the shadow side and expose for that shadow. And I hate to use this terminology, but it's the truth. It automatically overexposes the background. Agreed? Don't use that terminology, though. Say to yourself, self, what I'm doing is reading the face, and I'm reading that perfect, then that's what I'm exposing for is the shadow on the face. Then the background is automatically going into a high-key rendition. Okay? All right, whenever in doubt, in my opinion, for outdoor photography, whenever in doubt, read the subject, the exposure on the shadow side of the face. It's exactly what I talk about and tell our guys in our studio. What does that force us to do? It automatically forces us to have direction of light. There's no question at all. We have to have direction of light. What does your competition do? They'll go out, set the beautiful dolly up, under the tree line, what have you, and start taking pictures. And there's no direction of light. What constitutes direction of light on outdoor photography? Camera position relative to light direction. And if you'll photograph that beautiful bride or that beautiful couple, etc., into the shadow area, you'll have a better rendition, in my opinion, better rendition of light all the way through. When and where would you add your bare bulb? All right, I think this. If you have God's light, a natural illumination, and you don't need a bare bulb, you don't need a reflector, you don't need whatever, then I think you've got it made. You see what I mean? Let's come back now. See, say you don't have a nice day like here. When I say a nice day where you've got light direction coming in, you've got a dirty, dull, dismal day again. All right? Or like Sweet Jane right over here. Remember the print we looked at earlier? No light direction to speak of. No light direction because it was early morning. Okay? Then you need the bare bulb to snap it up to come in to give that much lighting.
What I'm really excited about, that I think that a lot of you are going to be excited about, especially Sharon, you're just into your first wedding. So I'm going to teach you how you can create really romantic, soft, beautiful pictures. It can be done on the wedding day. It can be done in your studio, window light. It's probably one of the most versatile portrait systems that I have. It's a simple Nikon FE2. And I like the Nikons because they're automatic features. When I taught at Brooks Institute 4 years ago, the instructor was in the back of the room, and everything I said was everything that she had told her students not to do. I said, when we pose our subjects, we take them very firmly and put them into position, especially Monty. And she's at the back saying, she teaches the students never to touch the subject, ever. And then I said, I just put the camera on automatic and leave it there all day and just shoot away. Oh, she wanted to leave the room because they've been spending 3 weeks learning exposure and zone system. But it's true. I put the camera on automatic. I open the lens wide open, 3.5. So now I've got a system here. The nice thing is the Nikons will go to a 4,000th of a second. So no matter almost any lighting conditions, outside bright sun, I'm at a 4,000th. Inside, I'm at an 1/8 of a second. It'll work anywhere. Now I use high-speed film. The best film ever was this Kodak VR1000. Now they don't make it anymore, but the thing that made it so good is because it had such a grain structure. The grain structure gave you beautiful soft skin tones. But this outdated, they kept improving the films and improving the films. Now there's all these 1600 films. Kodak's got an Ectopress, and Fuji has a 1600 film. And they all brag about how tight the grain is. Well, that's not what I want. I want the soft, grainy effect. So we take this newer film and go to the airport and x-ray it a few times. Now here's the trick. I saw this done in England, and we've got one light and a reflector. And Brian, why don't we just put a little light on the background so we'll open that up. I'm taking daylight film. I don't know what's back there for a backlight. That one on the floor over there, we can probably plug that into a photogenic. It's all available light. This picture, thanks, Mont, this is done here at Winona School, 1600 film with this pictrol and the filter on here. And this is the way it works. This is the formula.
Is that X-ray fog, or you just didn't?
This film is not X-ray fog, but I have X-ray fog film, and Monty published the pictures, and they're really gorgeous. It was an accidental X-ray fog, and the lab called me and said, there's no base on your film. It looks terrible. So I said, well, can you print them anyway? They printed them. Monty put them in black and white, printed them duotone, which gave them depth, and they're in our newsletter. The whole secret is we're putting daylight film in our camera. Any kind of daylight film, 1600, 1000, what have you. But we're going to work with our tungsten modeling lights. So we're going to put a blue filter on. This is an 80B or an 80C. They're different degrees, so you just thread this on. All this is going to do is take the tungsten light, and as it passes through your lens, it's going to convert it to accept the daylight film and give you good skin tones. So it's just a simple 80B blue filter. And then we take a Pictrol. The Pictrol is a diffusion device that's made for enlarging lenses. And it dials together and gives you a soft focus at various degrees. Now if you notice my Pictrol, it'll be on display at the break. We have a broken tooth on it, and I actually cut that tooth on purpose so that even when it's dialed all the way down, there's an open area up in that Pictrol. So the nice thing is, if I'm going to do a portrait right here of Rip on the front row, I'm going to focus my camera. Now you're in focus. I'm going to look around on the front, and I can see that the open area is in the bottom. So I have thumb screws on here, and I bring the open area into the upper third right there. Now, as I do Rip's portrait, and I open up just a little bit, I'm going to retain sharpness in his eyes. Now, when I was joking about out-of-date film, as we travel and pass through the Midwest, you can call these camera stores up and say, if you ever come across any old VR 1000, the old stuff that was real grainy, out of date, please call me and give them your number. I got a call just the other day, and the guy says, well, I didn't find any 1000, but I've got some 1600. He says, I got a whole case of it. He says, I'll sell it to you for $2.50 a roll. I'll say, I'll take 10 rolls, because I don't know if it's going to be any good or not. He shipped me 10 rolls for $25, and I've used it on my last 4 weddings. Now, what are we doing here? This is basically a big window right here, when we have this right on here. What I should do is see if I could get a roll of...
Turn it away from the lens.
Okay. Let's shoot this 1000-speed film. This was something that was a gift from Australia. We were passing through there. I'm going to load it up. You know, the best way to do this is let's just do it. Let's take pictures. In fact, all week long we'll just take pictures of each other. We've got models, and I'll just show you how easily we can come away with images. And that's what it is. When I'm at a wedding, you know, I'm just always fidgeting with the cameras. I'm always ready to take a picture. You can ask Monty. Sometimes he just looks at me and says, just sit down, just relax. And I'm like, you know, I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm anticipating.
I'll tell you what's happening. Our expenses are building up on processing.
But I'm always, it's true though, I try to anticipate everything that's going to happen. And I learned photography through a photojournalistic approach. And now I've gone back and laid all the groundwork. In fact, the foundations that I built were the hardest thing to do. And now that they're built, I'm just having fun with it. But until you lay a foundation, you're going to fall flat every time. Because I know, every time I do something exciting, Monty, look at this, what do you think? And he'd say, she has no neck. Since when do we turn bodies straight into the camera? Look at her chin, look at her hair. I finally just drive me crazy. I said, I'm going to learn that masculine pose and learn it well. So that's all I did for about a year, masculine pose. That's the only pose I did, and did it all 35 millimeter, but it worked. And it worked for me. And what we'll do is we'll start shooting some pictures. I'd like you guys to come around. If you're sitting down there, you're in the wrong place. I think you want to, don't block anybody, but let's come up. We'll bring a posing table, one light and a reflector, and put a little light on the background, and show you how easily these things fall together. In our studio, when we travel, I have props, and I know Don, I saw in his case, he's got all these little goodies. I have black gloves that I picked up in England somewhere. They go all the way here. We had some gorgeous fabrics from Taiwan, and somebody lifted them from us, but we used to wrap people's heads all the time in these beautiful fabrics. But this pastel portraiture lends itself to something soft. I like to lay people on mirrors and put little dried flowers around them. I like to do things like that, try to go above and beyond, but the pose and the lighting is always the same.
So what we're going to say is, those of you who are seated here, if you want to watch what's going on, why don't you come over here and sit on the floor?
Let's bring all 4 of you up here, the models, and then we'll just kind of, when we get up close, we'll see what we're going to do. We could do couples real easily, and we could do this young lady in the beginning very easily. I could get the black gloves and start with her up there. I know right with her. Why don't you come right up in front? Tell us your first name. Jessica. Have a seat right over here. Now all we're going to do is turn the head to the light and try to create that little modified loop shadow. Now the shadow is harder to see with a big soft light like this. The smaller lights that we use are more directional and give us that crispness. Now here you've got a big broad light, which actually lends itself very well to this technique. All right, turn your face to me a little, no smile, just like that. Okay, just like that. That's one. You know what we're going to do? Turn your face a little more to the left. Good. And I'm always establishing, excellent, right there. In your eyes, a hint of a smile. Just in your eyes. Good. You see, when I ask for a smile in the eyes, we got just a little bit from the lips. That's very important in getting a good expression. We always ask for an expression, and we never try to, if someone doesn't look good smiling, we're not going to push it. Just look for that big piece of black fabric. I know that that was in that, here it is, right here. Okay. We're going to bring that light forward. This is, like I said, one big, huge light. It's like a window. Your chin up a dash, turn your face here. It's not nearly as accurate, I would have to say, as what we're doing with the mini lights. But for soft focus portraiture, it's really nice. Your face this way a little. I just want to make sure the light is in the eyes. Your chin up a dash. Good. That's great. Now I'm getting a little bit of flare on the front of this, and it's coming from this. So, Brimer, if you can give me a gobo of any sort, a print would work like that. Just to shade my lens. We're always watching the front of the lens. If you're getting any flare in there, you can do all this work for nothing because you're going to lose it. Good. And your eyes up here, it's gorgeous. Just like that. Long exposure there. The light's really been cut down. Okay, now what you're going to do with that, just unplug it. We're going to plug it in right up here. Where are we going to put a spotlight? There's two places I'd love to see it. I'd love to see some light up here on the hair. She's got very dark hair, and we could really open up the hair. Or, in fact, that's what we're going to do with that. It's just going too dead up here. The gloves need a little bit extra light. There you go. That's good what you're doing. In fact, tell you what, I need another grip here. Can you hold this? You're just going to shade my lens with this. And Brimer, you take it and just hold it straight overhead. It won't fall off. And just light her hair. Yeah, and it's spilling on her face just a little, so take it back to the background. That's it. Oh yeah, that made all the difference. Come down a little lower. I just want to keep intensifying. The beauty of this photography is what you see is what you get. Your eyes up here, chin up a dash, touch of a smile, easy. Let's keep it going. That's a long exposure. I don't know, the light's very weak. We're shooting at 1/8 of a second. I'm usually at about 1/30. You chin up a little bit. Good, that's gorgeous. Just let your eyes go to the corner of the room. Turn your face to the left a little, your chin down. Good. Light more intense on the hair. Just keep bringing it down. Right there, gorgeous. Just your eyes back at me. Just your eyes. And a hint of a smile this time, really easy. Good. That's great. Okay, let's relax.
Look at the beautiful image from that one broad, soft modeling light. And that hair light, what a number that's doing on her.
I've got 1,000 film, but I've rated it at 600. I've got 2 stops taken off the front because I've got an 80B blue filter. Now what I'd like to do at this point, if we'll do this in groups, but we're kind of pushed, we're going to break into 3 groups. I would have a mirror here, an acrylic mirror, put her head on the mirror. I would have flowers in here, I'd have props. I'd have a muslin in the background just to throw up. Let's pull the muslin down. Let's spotlight her, okay? Let's take this off the front and let's put a barrel spotlight right on her face. Let's do Hollywood lighting. Let's just keep going. But this end of it is just what you saw, just as simple as it gets. And what I love about it, with strobes, I think there's a little bit of guesswork sometimes. And with this, we're working with just the modeling lights. We're just working with what you see is what you get. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the background is too bright or too weak, we're going to adjust that.
So he is not using the flash. He's using just the modeling lights.
Can you get the same effect with the flash?
You can get the same effect, but then you're not using the 1,000 or 1,600 film and getting the grainy look that he wants to get from it. Also, yeah, you have to work pretty much wide open with this to get that softness on the...
Yeah, that's a very good point what Monty just said. I always leave my lens on 3.5, because if you're at 11 or 8, and then you pull your preview button in, you see all the sharp edges, just like a vignetter. Have you ever noticed when your vignetter's on and you're at f11, your vignetter's a black line? It's the same with this. If you're wide open, what you see is what you get. There's no surprises. It's really neat. It's fun and easy to use. I'm going to have this up all week.
Jaws 3 is the name.
Just 3?
Jaws.
Jaws 3. Jaws 3. Oh, that's right. So basically, the beauty of it is with children, you put the kids far away from it and you stay 10 feet away from them. Your little zoom lens is right on top of their faces. Then I take this Pictrol off, take the blue filter out, put the Pictrol back on. We stick them by a window. We put Dad outside. Dad, go outside. Dad goes outside. I say, Michael, where's Dad? Here's Dad, there's Dad, and the kid's all over the window looking at Dad. Dad's outside going like this, and I'm sitting here shooting profiles of the kid at 2/50th of a second.
And I come right afterwards and clean up the window.
And then I say, "Brrr," and the kid looks right at me like that, and it's just right there. Bam! I've got a picture of that kid. Roderick, you just got on film there. And basically, the window light stuff is hard to tell from the modeling light. The skin tones are so nice on either one. We take muslins and we throw them outside on the ground and throw kids in the muslin. Let's show you some of these pictures.
These photographs are unmistakably Clay's. He's got a style of his own. It's simple, it's direct, eyes into the camera here, and now they're looking at each other. He just knelt her down by his knees, look at each other, and then come in closer. Impact, drama, that's all part of Clay's work here. This simple photograph of the boy by daylight, by the window, a masculine pose and a reflector. And here she's outside under a tree, lying on a tarp, a canvas. That's all it is to it. Daylight from a window again. Profile, full face, mood, feeling. Talk about feeling. How about this little girl on her mother's arm? Just easy does it. And this photograph was made from a ladder, way above them, looking down. They're lying down. We even transferred this to a Polaroid, and look at this. We made a magazine cover out of this. It's incredible. Talk about magazine covers. Look what he got here from England. That's Clay.
The first day, we thought we would break up into 3 different groups and everybody would have their chance with each of the instructors. It just didn't work out right, did it?
I didn't. I think the students, first day there, they weren't sure where they should be. If they were going to go see the great Monty, the great Don, or this kid they'd never heard of. So
the great Clay, I
think it took a while for the people to know where they belonged. We all got back together in the main room and it just took off.
Okay, but here's a segment of me working with the bride. We've posed her first. We decided we're going to do full face, so that means the shoulders are at a 45-degree angle. We've leaned her in the direction her body is facing across the waist. When she turns her face to us, her back left shoulder is the low shoulder. She's going to turn and tip her head to the higher right shoulder. One light crossing over her body, and her face is turning back to the main light to get light into both eyes. And you could do it just with one light, unless if you wanted to be a little bit more careful, if you wanted the veil to look white instead of muddy gray-blue, then you need to light the veil. If you want the background to have some depth so that it appears three-dimensional, you've got to have light on the background. And then to keep her hair light and blonde and get some detail in the front, we've added a top light. Recently, we started adding the fill light right behind the camera. 2 f-stops less than the main light. Okay, we're ready to go. And listen, she looks great in those photographs. When you look at her, she's nothing, right? But basically, that's the way I talk to the subjects. I'm always joking with them and teasing them. And usually I have music playing when this is happening. So,
how do you determine camera height?
Camera height, great. Camera height is wherever it has to be to avoid distortion. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to have lines that go like this when you look down a railroad track. So when we're going 3/4 length and we're cropping from here to the top of her head and giving her a little space, then the camera height's going to be right in the middle of that bust level. Right now, I've got the camera basically straight up and down. Well, no, it's at a slight angle. I'm going to tip the camera a lot this week to make the height on one side higher than lower, to change the angle of the subject. It's basically the same thing. If you go like this and you look at her, if you tip the camera this way, as a matter of fact, that's not a bad idea to do. Just make it like a square or a circle out of your fingers and do it right now so you know which way to tip the camera. Look at her, and I try to make the higher shoulder higher as a general rule. So if you want to raise this shoulder, tip your camera to the left. Remember the importance of lifting her up and keeping the body, and I always make the refinements looking, lower your flowers just a tiny bit, and let this finger come up just a fraction. Turn your hand more sideways rather than into the camera. Okay, can you, instead of holding the gown, well, okay, instead of holding the gown down there, hold it up higher here. Okay, could you, were you doing this before, Phil?
Yes.
Come on back here, let somebody else, would you hold this, please, and let Phil see what's going on? I tell you, when I have a real short veil, I'll sometimes take a needle or a pin, attach a thread to it, put it through the veil, and just pull it out that way without the hand being in it. So this, it's a good thing I had you. Just kneel down. And this line has to be straight. And we're going to lift you up and let the shoulder drop. Okay, we're ready to go with film. Let's test it. Is it going to work? Yeah. Okay, you're leaning too much. Turn your body to your left and turn your face back to us. That's great.
You keep that elbow pulled back far enough to where you...
Well, what I'm seeing is just a little bit here to show the waistline. She's heavy, and of course we're going to bring it in so we don't show the waistline. Lift this finger up just a tiny bit. And I can go sharp to soft just by turning the dial a little bit. Your eyes right about here, just a hint of a smile now. And your eyes, the eyes right up here, your chin up a tiny bit. Let's do it again just for expression, no change. Just your eyes right here. That's good.
Look at the bottom of the photograph, way below her knees for support. The flowers are pulled back, and of course we're going to crop the hand out.
For a 3/4 length, I am not going to turn her body straight into the camera, because then her body will look too broad. So for a 3/4 length, when her body shows, I'm going to keep her head just where it is, and I'm going to make her very uncomfortable, but turn her head a little bit more to the 2/3. You know what I'm looking at? The eye coming right to the edge. And so now, to keep that same light pattern going, I'm moving the light a couple inches. Is that where I want it to be? Right. So you see, it's exactly what we did with the statue. Now I'm going to look through here, turn your face, that's it, stop right there. I want her eyes to be centered first. So let your eyes find a spot on the wall there, straight ahead, don't look at the camera. Your chin up a tiny bit, and wherever you're looking, look look about an inch higher. And now come back to the left, just with your eyes, and turn your face to the right a little bit more. That's perfect 2/3. Now look about an inch to your right. Just a hint of a smile now. Why don't you come in, Angela, and set that pose up again. I didn't hear you.
Because I was talking to Sue.
No. Angela, get up here and do it. You can do it. Just set up the pose. You don't want to do it? You look like a good. Okay. You got to volunteer for this stuff. Don't be afraid to touch her, Phil. It's okay. Okay, now the only way to tell Phil what you've done is to go back and look through the camera. Look through the camera and tell her what to do. Most people are going to come up here and tell her what to do. That's not going to work because it's not what the camera sees. The only thing that you can do is to come. Now keep looking through the camera and tell her what you want her to do. Keep looking through the camera and tell her what you want her to do.
Okay.
Her name is Norma Jean.
All right, Norma Jean. Will you lean up a little bit? Sit up straight. Turn your rear shoulder a little farther back.
Yes.
A little farther, a little bit more.
Yes.
Drop that. Not raise the rear shoulder just a little bit. That's too much. Right there. Right there. I like that. What do you think?
I think it's great. Okay, now here's the hard thing, Phil, is to look through the camera when you're giving direction. Because everybody tends to come up here and tell her what to do, or to come over here and tell her what to do, but you're not seeing what the camera sees. So the only way for you to know what's happening is talk to her while you're looking at the ground glass of the camera.
Okay.
You learn that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You don't have to sir me now. Okay. Yeah.
Where's your normal camera height?
Camera height, it depends. Well, right now the camera height's going to be wherever it has to be to avoid distortion. We're cropping below the knees and going to the top of her head. And I'd say the middle area of that is about at bust level. Okay. So camera height's about at bust level. Her bust level, not mine. Okay. All right, and that's important because you don't want to get down low and look up. If you get down too low and look up, she's going to be real broad at the bottom and real skinny up top. If your camera height's too high, they're going to have big shoulders and a little small body and look real short. Now what we'll do is look through the camera, and I have to decide. I see a couple things happening. I see her earring hanging down there beside her cheek and that little piece of hair. The little piece of hair I like, but the earring looks like she's got a growth coming out of that side of her ear. So I'm going to ask you, Norma Jean, would you remove this earring right here? It was just too heavy hanging out of the side of her face. And you turn your face to me just a tiny bit. You may have blinked. Let's do it again. Just a touch of a smile like that. And look back at me. Turn your face to me just a tiny bit. Looking right up here. All right, step back and let's see what you've done with the hand. Okay, I can help you.
Okay.
Kneel, right?
Yes.
Okay. You've covered over her right hand with her left. And you've also got everything falling forward. Remember what Don said in class and what I said here is push the wrist into the waist. So let's take this hand and let's just do one hand at a time. We're going to push the wrist in and the fingers forward. So this is what's happening here.
Got it straight, push it.
Push the wrist into her body and the fingers forward.
Right.
Then we'll take this hand and put it over top of this wrist and do the same thing. And that's it.
Okay.
The wrist in, the fingers forward. Fingers extended, slightly curved. Now if we want to bring our hands up to her face, what we're going to have to do is raise the table just a little bit. And because her head is going to be turned and tipped this way, we'll bring just one hand up to her face. Let your fingers go up. Same thing, wrist bent in. Now let me come back to the camera and see what I've got here. Okay, that's good. I've got a lower than normal camera angle. For a head and shoulder picture, can I have the ladder, please? For a head and shoulder picture, I come up above the eyes, above her head, and shoot down on her. The reason I do that is because I want to minimize the body and emphasize her face. So I have to stand on a ladder for this now. And Bruce, the veil light is coming through over her shoulder here. So it's got to move all, keep going, keep going, keep going, that's it. Norma Jean, your chin up now. Now adjust her height, her face to camera height. Turn your face back to me, just a tiny bit. And your chin up, just a fraction. Now wherever you're looking, look about an inch higher. I'm coming in now, and how am I cropping this? I'm cropping the top of her head off, just a little bit of this off, because I'm keeping her eyes about a third of the way down from the top of the picture. And if you're going to crop the top of people's heads off on these close-ups, you better show samples and tell them why you're doing it while you're taking the picture, so they later on don't say, what happened? You missed the top of my head. Let's do a profile of her. Now, a profile means that her, can you move that fill light? We're moving away from the wall. Just move it over this way some. Okay. A profile means her shoulders are going to be at what angle to the camera? 45. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll turn her body at a 45. And which is going to be her low shoulder? This is going to be her low shoulder, right? She's going to turn her head this way, so this is going to be her low shoulder. So we'll leave the table under her low shoulder, and we'll let this hand go out just to give us a base to the composition. We're going to turn her face to profile. And where does the light go? Right. Excuse me. So actually, the light pattern that we have on her face is identical to the light pattern we've always had. As her face moved away from camera position, so did the light. But if you come over here, it's nothing but a full face picture. Now we're going to lift her, and we're also, which way do we lean her? This way, across the belt buckle, across the belt buckle. So we're going to lean her forward towards the camera because that's the way her body's facing. You understand that? She's not sitting up this way. She's leaning this way. And this table, relax your shoulders. You see what happens when she's trying so hard, her shoulders come up level. This has to be the low shoulder. And I'd like to see a little separation between the chin and the shoulder. So I'm going to lower the camera quite a bit. Now let me come around here and see if I see a profile. Let both of your shoulders down. Yes. So it means still that I have to turn her body more. Always looking at the angle of the body. Turn your face back to me just a tiny, and your chin up. I see your shoulder coming up way too high in the background, so just let this relax some. And look right about here. I'm trying to give her a spot to look at, and then I'll make minute changes as I look through the lens. Now I see a separation between her shoulder and her neck, which is perfect, but I'm also, Bruce, catching that little curl coming down on her cheek. Can you move that back, please? No, on the other side, closer to you. That's right, we're cleaning out the background. Bruce, would you hold the flowers right into here? And I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it's going to be a base to the composition, an extension of her arm. Chin up just a tiny bit, and your eyes a little bit higher. Watch the light get in her eyes. Now a slight touch of a smile. Chin out again a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to do, you're going to stay that way. I'm going to tip the camera the exact opposite way. All the way. Now bring your chin down. And look down to the ground there. Too much. Tip the top of your head away from me. Stretch your chin out. And look a little bit higher with your eyes. And your face away from me just a tiny bit.
Whichever side of the picture you want to raise, you tip the camera in that direction. Here the camera is tipped to the right, and here the camera is tipped to the left. One picture, two different angles just by tipping the camera alone. It's that simple.
By the way, you know, we do a lot of father-daughter pictures with people that look just like this. And you know, it's tough.
I'm the daughter.
No. But it's tough. It's tough to do this and use a hair light. Let's suppose, you want to come over, please? Here, just come up for a minute, please, yeah. I know that you have a beautiful blonde and you want to light her hair, or you want to light the veil like this. And then you get a guy like this that you can't put a hair light on. So let me just show you what we'll do. Just stay seated.
Yeah, I stay seated.
Yeah,
come in close.
Come here, Peg.
Sweet Peggy.
Put your arms in. Put your arms
in. You know, no. Right.
Peg, look over here, right? Just look here.
Oh, you must have a kid. You're a sweetheart.
Enough. Okay, it's Monday now. Let's go back to the school and see what happened on the second day.
Most of the shots that I'm doing, the question and comment what type film we're using, either VPS or VPH, what have you. The biggest percentage of my work or our work is on VPS. And why? Even though we're dragging the shutter, why? Stop and think about it. If you're in the church, you're in the home, what have you. Now, a commercial photographer will not agree with that statement, because what does VPS do? VPS, long exposure, and Uncle Kodak says don't, as we all know, don't make the photograph longer than 1/10 of a second. And if you do, then Uncle reciprocity is going to set in. It's going to pick up, you know, a color shift, etc. But what does it do? Where does it shift? It shifts to the warm side on VPS. Shifts to the warm side. Who says that's wrong? With the chandeliers going golden, you know, that's the reason I like it. Because the light itself, when the exposure is made, the bare bulb, is going to balance in with the subject. Okay?
Let me just review, or let Clay review how simple this is. Everybody tends to make too complicated a deal out of it. It's very simple. We're going to measure the light on the background and expose for it. Now, it may not have enough light on the background, in which case you can throw a flash on the background and expose for whatever it is. But yesterday, when we examined those wedding albums, so many pictures on the church altar went dark behind the people. And that's what makes the background look so bad. People want photographs on the church altar, but the church altar looks like a distraction if it's not lit well. For the most part, the majority of churches have beautiful lighting. Don't lose it. Expose for the lighting that's already there, and then just match it on the people. But if the church doesn't have good lighting on the background, put a flash on the background. And whatever the exposure is on the background, that's what you set your lens at. Then you put the same amount of light on the people and explain to them what you did here with this.
Well, this is really just a separation light, and since it's a bare bulb, it just goes both ways, and it brings them off of the background. Now, if we need to, we can put the reflector on and light like a dark curtain, bam, to give them more separation. But if for the most part, we just keep it like this. And one of the beautiful things is a lot of time we're working in situations at 1/4 of a second at f4. So this can be a main light in front, and we can put another one behind, and that's that simple. You're on location, you're doing weddings, you're doing bar mitzvahs. All you need is a little bare bulb in the front, it lights the faces, and a little in the back, and it lights the background.
Let's discuss how this picture was taken right here. First of all, what do I look for when I take photographs? People say to me, I don't carry backgrounds into a home because I would rather have the challenge of finding my own background. And you find me a photographer who says that, and I'll find you a photographer, and it'll be the same photographer who's too lazy to carry a background with him. So we do carry a background into the people's homes when we're photographing head and shoulders or 3/4 length. If we want to show the person or if we want to show the gown, we'll put them against the background. But when you get into a home and you want to show the environment, let's figure out how we're going to photograph the environment. So in this particular situation, I'm looking for depth. The room is full of a lot of art, so I want to show it. I want to give you the feeling of a house without having the whole background compete for attention with the photograph of the subject. So I see all this window light coming in the dining room. I said, well, that's great depth. So I went into the dining room, and I took a light meter reading at the far end there, and the mirrors in the background. That was my exposure, so I knew I had the background. Then I stood the bride in the hallway. There's a door outside here, open, daylight coming in the door. And over here, I'm losing all this. There's a tremendous fall off of light from the brilliance of the light coming into the door to all these paintings and things back here. So I've got to have some way of bringing this up to this. So I just took a little small 100-watt bare bulb and put it, this is another door just like here. I'm shooting through the doorway. I put a very weak bare bulb in here, not to match this, but to be like 1 or 2 stops less than this, so it appears as if it's natural light coming in here. So 1 bare bulb lighting up the left side of the picture. At the same time, that bare bulb is also giving us cross-lighting on the dress. It's doing 2 things. It's lighting the background here, and at the same time, it's creating detail in here so this doesn't darken the dress. all the light is coming in the door at the bottom of the dress. And this is what happens so often when we use daylight coming in the window or daylight coming in the door. It doesn't always hit up top where the face is. So the gown is all lit by daylight, and she's in shadow up here by her face. So we took a Monty illuminator, or one of the Westcott Monty illuminator, or reflector, and I had one of my assistants outside the door picking up some direct sunlight and bouncing that sunlight onto her face. So her face is lit by a reflector. A bare bulb is opening up the shadowed area here and also giving us a little cross lighting on the gown. And that's exactly how that picture was created. One bare bulb all the way over here, a reflector outside the door. Here's the same situation, photographing in the bride's home, and let's look at what the problems were here and how they were resolved. I wanted to show it was daylight outside. I didn't want the window to wash out. So now I start out with what is the exposure outside? Do I want the outside to have real deep, rich greens? No. I want to show, I don't want the windows to be white. I want to show the foliage outside. Overexpose outside a little bit. And I set my exposure by what I wanted to show coming through the window. So let's say now this is going to be a 30th at 5/6. So the outside is going to be overexposed. 40 millimeter lens to show the whole living room. Now, how am I going to light this whole scene? Well, I'll tell you what we did. Tell you what Clay did. He took one strobe, and you got to realize that this wall comes in this way. Right over here where the wall met the ceiling, we took one strobe and bounced it into the room. Right at the top where the wall meets the ceiling, this one strobe lit the entire room. And then we took a very small, weak, bare bulb and put it behind her to light her veil. It's 2 lights to light up the whole living room. And you'll see a wedding later this week where we lit the living room exactly like it. Once we did that and it worked, we keep doing it now. If we're going to photograph a bride or a family group in a living room situation, it's one light. But that one light has got to spread and not just photograph, not just cover the people, but to light the whole room. So we'll take that one light and bounce it into the wall and let the whole wall and the ceiling be our light source. If I were photographing all of you right here, you know what we would do? I could take one strong light and bounce it on the ceiling and just have it come back this way. Because that's what happens. That's the angle of incidence and all that bull. Okay? But it really works.
No, I think we've probably...
I love it. I love it.
Right reflector.
So just get your biggest light source you can. The big ceiling here. It works. Guys, you got to try it.
Do you ever have a problem with bouncing right in there with the colors?
Yeah, the color of the ceiling, if it's green or yellow, you want to stay away from it.
Or just put a white card there.
Okay, then would you use like that half dome you had on there?
Then we'd use the half dome. Well, we were doing a family portrait, and we had this young kid with us again, Brian. We were bouncing the same thing, doing a family portrait of 20 people. And right before we took it, Brian said, you know, these walls are yellow, and so is the ceiling. So real quick, he stuck a Monty illuminator up in that crack, and we just put a piece of tape on it. And then it's just like using an umbrella. We could have just put a silver umbrella on and done the same thing. But the way the light hits it, I think, gives it a better spread. Just kind of doing the whole room like that.
Talk about a couple of your pictures, and then we'll let the star take over.
I'll show you a fun picture. If I could, Brian, if you can bring that camera out, that'd be great.
All right.
This is a picture right here we made in England. I'm hooked on this 30 millimeter lens deal.
This is good. I love
And Don really got me started on that 30. I've got 2 prints here. You guys have to come look at this one as well. This is done in Hasselblad's booth at WPI. But here's the story behind this picture.
Excuse me, this will never hang in competition. The lines aren't straight.
So what we're doing pictures in England down the hallway, doing groups, bridal parties, and things like that for a classroom of about 13 students. So they're getting ready.
50 students. It sounds better.
Well, it was a private class. High-paying dollars. It was. It was a one-day master class. So we did all these pictures, and Monty says, okay, and they're trying to run us out of there because they're getting ready to set up for a party. Okay, Monty says, let's all go to the room. So everyone's going, and I'm getting the camera and the light and all this. And this is Ray Lowe, one of England's top photographers. And I said, Ray, get behind the bar real quick. Get behind the bar. And I hear Monty say, Clay! Down the hall, Clay! I'll be right there. I'm just getting there quick. Come on, Ray. Come on. I'll put Ray back here. Come on, Ray. Come on. Clay! Come on. All right, Ray. Excuse me. Come on. Don, get in here. Don, get in here. Come on, Ray. Come on, Ray. Get in here. He's right here. And so I said, we don't have time to meet it because we didn't. So I said, all right, I know it's F4. So just take this bare bulb like this. And I put it on blue. Blue is F4 because it's wide angle.
Be sure to put it on where you got the hair on.
So they're saying, take a meter reading. I'm saying, we don't have time. Come on, Monty's Clay, where are you, Clay? I go, okay, Ray, just like that. Do a Polaroid. No, we don't have time. Let's shoot. And we're just cranking away here. The light's just coming in from the edge here, lighting Ray. We're going a quarter of a second. Lock the mirror right here. Hold the glass up right here for me. Pick you right there. We go. I love it. There we go. It's good. Yeah. Clay, here we come. We're coming. All right. So on the way back to class,
I love it.
we walk in and we get the picture developed the next day at the APL show, and it's been in